The Trump regime is completely unprepared for the chaos it just unleashed by manufacturing a crisis in Los Angeles. In his classic fashion, Donald and his cronies did zero due diligence, and now they're scrambling after deploying Marines to LA, which is a questionable and potentially dangerous move in the first place. The Pentagon is reportedly in a panic, rushing to establish rules for the Marines who could be asked to use force against United States citizens. Overseas, troops follow rules of engagement. At home, they follow rules for the use of force, which must be issued by Northern Command. Each Marine is supposed to receive a card outlining what they can and cannot do. Why does that matter? Well, one, because they should know what they can and cannot do, but also they need to be able to recognize what constitutes an illegal order. None of that happened. 700 Marines landed in Los Angeles with no clear directives right after what many are calling a quote-unquote muted night of protests. These calm demonstrations are nowhere near the kind of threat Marines are trained to handle or, on American soil, legally authorized to handle. The Posse Comitatus Act bars the military from acting as domestic law enforcement, except under very narrow and extreme exceptions like the Insurrection Act, which, of course, Donald has floated but has not yet invoked, which begs the question, what in God's name are Marines doing in LA if that is the case? There's more chaos, of course. The National Guard, which was deployed earlier this week, despite objections from California's governor, has been living under appalling conditions. Photos from the San Francisco Chronicle show the guards sleeping on floors, crammed into basements and loading docks of federal buildings. What's worse? Senior military officials say that this situation could continue until at least Thursday. All of this came just hours after Donald accused California Governor Gavin Newsom of disrespecting the Guard. Quote, "If they spit, we hit. Such disrespect will not be tolerated," unquote. Newsom immediately fired back, writing, quote, "You sent your troops here without fuel, food, water, or a place to sleep. Here they are, being forced to sleep on the floor, piled on top of one another. If anyone is treating our troops disrespectfully, it is you, at real Donald Trump," unquote. Yes, Donald Trump has never respected the military, and he never will. He's a 5-time draft dodger. That means 5 men went to Vietnam in his place while he continued to spend his rich daddy's money and fail upward. Before we go on, this show is your independent source for the truth the Trump regime does not want covered. So please like and share our videos. And if you support our mission, please subscribe to our channel. If deployment weren't reckless enough, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth just made everything worse at an appearance on Capitol Hill. At an oversight hearing before the House Defense Appropriations Subcommittee, Hegseth was grilled by both Democrats and Republicans over cost, legality, and logistics. Because he's incompetent, unprepared, and entirely unqualified for his position, he had no answers. He just deflected a lot, something he probably picked up from his boss. When Representative Betty McCollum pressed him, the exchange turned tense. Hegseth couldn't even explain why Marines were being used to respond to protests the Pentagon itself described as muted.
In the remainder of this fiscal year, are you going to pull the money to cover these deployments? What holes are being created?
We were both originally from Minnesota, which is why I recall 2020 quite well, when Governor Walz abandoned a police precinct and allowed it to be burned to the ground, and also allowed 5 days of chaos to occur inside the streets of Minneapolis. Whether it's Minneapolis or Los Angeles.
I have limited time. I asked a budget
and they
question.
Are being,
Could the Secretary please address the budget? Thank you.
If the police chief said she was overwhelmed,
if the Secretary is not
so we
going
helped.
to ask the budgetary questions, I will yield back my time if the Secretary refuses to answer the budgetary questions I put before him. They're important. What training missions aren't happening? Where are you pulling the money from? And how are you planning this in the moving forward? These are budget questions that affect this committee and the decisions we're going to be making in a couple of hours. If you're not going to answer them, please let the chairman know, and I will take back my time and I will yield it back to the
Hegseth spent most of the hearing dodging questions. Finally, he turned to his acting comptroller, who revealed the number that Hegseth and the Department of Defense has been hiding. $134 million. That is how much this absurd and likely unconstitutional show of force in Los Angeles is costing American taxpayers. I'm going to repeat that number again. $134 million so Donald can have his dangerous anti-American spectacle. Representative Rosa DeLauro was furious and called out the administration's complete lack of planning.
The challenge is our department under the previous administration squandered a lot of that. By
Please, I want your plan. I've had difficulties with the prior administration, and I don't mind calling them out. What is your plan for the future? Can we get that in writing and on paper so that we know where you're going? Because we don't have anything today. We have zip, nada, and knowing where you're going. You can talk percentages, you can talk about whatever you want, but unless this committee sees dollars and cents and where you're going and what your plan is, then we may reconsider what you need to do to go forward. Give us the details.
Congresswoman, we have the details and we will provide them.
Then let's have them.
He doesn't have the details. He doesn't know anything. And after all of this, here's the kicker. The Marines deployed at great expense to California against the governor of California's wishes haven't even been used. Marine Corps Commandant General Eric Smith told Congress the 700 Marines in Los Angeles haven't responded to any protests. They're just standing by to guard federal buildings. Recap here. Donald sent in National Guard troops that Gavin Newsom asked him not to send. Then he activated Marines against the Posse Comitatus Act to go to California to protect federal buildings against American citizens. It cost $134 million. It has escalated. National tensions are high, all for a mission that never even existed in the first place. So, I mean, maybe this is a rhetorical question. Why is the Trump regime so unprepared? Well, because one, they don't know what they're doing, obviously, but they were looking for a solution in search of a problem. Donald, for years now, has been gunning to declare martial law in this country. He is desperate to cling to and seize more power. They are unprepared because there was no crisis to manage in the first place. They're trying to create one. Donald has been flooding social media with lies, claiming to people who don't know any better that Los Angeles is in flames. He wrote, quote, "If I didn't send in the troops, the city would be burning to the ground," unquote. Let's be very honest here. There have been some isolated incidents. There's not a movement. That's not the city. The vast majority of protests have been peaceful. Marches, signs, chants. There's literally no justification for the Marines to be there at all, and law enforcement would have been more than adequate to contain any of the isolated incidents that have occurred. Donald wants chaos. We know this. We've always known this. It's all he's got. It is literally the only card he has left to play. He needs Americans who are still willing to believe him to believe that Los Angeles is collapsing so he can justify turning the United States military on us. The truth of the matter is Los Angeles is just fine. The Marines don't need to be there, and the fact that they are there doesn't mean that they need to be used. The protests continue to be calm. Let's take a look at what's really happening.
My grandma, who only watches Fox News, she called me today. She said, "You need to get out of LA. LA is burning. Aren't you scared?" Meanwhile, this is what's going on in LA. Thank you so much. Police in LA are overwhelmed. We got to send in the Marines. Send in the Marines. Meanwhile, the police in LA.
That is just terrifying. Anyway, let's add some context here. There have been more arrests at sporting events in recent history than there have been at these protests. Let's take a look at Keith Olbermann's analysis.
On the night of the 11th of October, 2020, 76 people were arrested in Los Angeles for refusing to follow the instructions of law enforcement, for lighting fires, for assaulting members of law enforcement, for graffiti, for general mayhem, for rioting conditions. They were at a celebration of the Los Angeles Lakers' last basketball championship. 76. On Sunday at the Trump ICE riots in Los Angeles, the number arrested for the same offenses was 42. That's the real state of play on the ground in Los Angeles. 76 arrests for the Lakers, 42 arrests for the Trump riots. It's a final.
This entire operation that's been orchestrated by Donald and the Trump regime is a sham. It is not designed to protect American citizens from anything. It is designed to provoke panic, not maintain order. Thankfully, California's leaders see right through all of this. Governor Newsom condemned the isolated violence, but called Donald's actions exactly what they are, an incitement to escalate.
These idiots that are jumping up on cars, that are burning these Waymos, these people, that's a disgrace. Mm-hmm. And the impact they're having on our democracy, there's a lot at risk here. I mean, this is not just a simple act of disobedience. They should be arrested. They should be held accountable. Anyone who attacks any innocent person, including a law enforcement person that's lawfully doing their job, they're members of our community just like everybody else. They go to the same churches. They're good human beings. Mm-hmm. And, just because we don't like Donald Trump, just because we don't like their orders, doesn't mean you have the right to hurt or harm people. And that goes for them as well. And we'll hold them, everybody, to a higher level of accountability. But that's not what Trump is after. He's not for peacemaking. He's here for war. He wants a civil war.
The people, immigration raids, and the brutality of being exercised by ICE agents are not the ones creating the chaos. This is very similar to what happened during the Black Lives Matter movement. There may have been fringe agitators. There always are. But the organizers of these protesters, the people showing up to protest legitimately, are not the ones creating the problems. Donald knows that. He's not trying to restore order. He is trying to upend order. He's trying to provoke a crackdown so that he has an excuse. He wants to bait Americans into conflict in order to justify his authoritarian power grab. We cannot fall for this ever, especially not now. There is too much at stake, not just in Los Angeles, but in the United States of America, as thanks to Donald Trump and the Trump regime, we continue to devolve into an authoritarian police state. Please take a second and like and share this video. It'd be awesome if you could subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please follow us and give the show a 5-star rating because it really does help other people find our content. Thanks.